स्वीकार करो एता। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे हरे, हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी, जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। गोपीजना वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी जय गोपीजना वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदना ब्रज जनरंजना यशोदानंदना ब्रज जनरंजना यमुना तीरा वनचारी यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जना वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन ब्रज जनरंजना यमुना तीरा वनचारी यमुना तीरा वनचारी हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय राधा मदन मोहन राधा मदन मोहन राधे जय जगन्नाथ बलदेवा जय सुभद्रा जय गौरानिताय जय गौरानिताय जय जय प्रभुपाद एवं विष्णुपाद परमं सपरिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्रीमती श्री भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रीला प्रभुपाद की जय। एवं विष्णुपाद परमं सपरिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्रीमद् भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नामाचार्य नरदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपा गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन धाम की जय। रजभूमि वृंदावन धाम की जय। मायापुर नवद्वीप धाम की जय। पुरुषोत्तम चैत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। गंगामय की यमुनामय की जय। भक्ति देवी तुलसी महारानी की जय। समवेत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। युग धर्म हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। द मोस्ट मर्सीफुल लॉर्ड श्री श्री राधा मदन मोहन की जय। द मोस्ट मर्सीफुल लॉर्ड श्री श्री जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रामय की जय। द मोस्ट मर्सीफुल लॉर्ड श्री श्री गौनिताय की जय। निताय गौर प्रेम नंदे all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to Guru and Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Prabhupada Lilamritam ki jai. So we will read this song, meaning of this song. Dust from the lotus feet of a pure devotee is conducive to the devotion service, while service to the Vaishnava is itself the supreme perfection and the root of the tender creeper of divine love. I observe with great care the holy days like Ekadasi and Janmashtami, for they are the mother of the devotion. As my dwelling places, I choose with the greatest of reverence and love the transcendental abode of Sri Krishna. All those places where my Lord Gaurasundara travelled for pastimes, I will visit in the company of loving devotees. My mind always begs for the opportunity to hear the music of the mridanga. Upon hearing the kind of kirtana ordained by Lord Gaurachandra, my heart dances in ecstasy. By beholding the deity forms of the divine couple, Sri Sri Radha Krishna, I feel the greatest joy. By honoring the Lord's Prasada, I conquer over all worldly illusions. Golok Vrindavan appears in my home whenever I see the worship and service of Lord Hari going on there. Upon seeing the Ganges, which is a river of a nectar emanating from the lotus feet of the Lord, my happiness knows no bounds. The sight of the holy Tulasi trees soothes my soul, for I know she gives pleasure to Lord Krishna. By honoring Sak, a green leafy vegetable preparation, a dear favorite of Lord Chaitanya, I consider life worthwhile. Whatever Bhaktivinoda obtains that is conducive for the service of Sri Krishna, I accept every day with the greatest of joy. Shri Shri Gaunitai ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan ki jai, Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadrame ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are reading Srila Prabhupada Lilamritam. This is volume 3. The title New Jagannath Puri. It was 7 a.m. Srila Prabhupada sat on his dais in the temple. Beside him, on an altar, stood the recently acquired the statue of Krishna. The child Krishna stood 2 feet high, with his left hand on his lap, his right hand holding a rod. Gurudasa had found him at an import store and had begged the manager to sell him. And after several visits, the man had agreed. For $35, Prabhupada had given him the name Kartama Sai, the boss. This morning, as Prabhupada and Kartama Sai looked out at the devotees in the room, only about 6 people were present. The night before, the temple had been crowded. Where are the others? Prabhupada asked. And then he gave the answer himself. They are sleeping. All this sleeping is not good. He took out his kartal and began playing the 1, 2, 3 rhythm. Mukunda took up mridanga and played along, trying to execute the rhythms Srila Prabhupada had recently taught him. Srila Prabhupada had not even begun singing when the door opened and a half dozen barefoot hippies wandered in, reeking of marijuana. They glanced around, then sat down on the floor with the devotees as Prabhupada began singing Guruvastakam, the Vaishnava prayers to the spiritual master. Although none of his disciples knew the words, they loved to listen to Swamiji sing these morning prayers. Unhurriedly, he sang each verse several times, repeating each line, deliberately developing the mood of unalterated service to the spiritual master. Then, one of the hippies, a boy with a long, straight blonde hair and a red headband, began mumbling, fidgeting, and moaning. Someone softly asked him to be quiet. The boy fussed, but then moaned again. Swamiji and his followers were used to drugged hippies who stayed up all night and came to the morning program, sometimes disrupting things. Usually, the visitors remained submissive, and even if they occasionally called out in a strange mode, they usually found peace in chanting Hare Krishna and would try to blend with the energy of the devotee. But today's discordant visitors seemed agitated by the chanting, as if it were challenging him. Rather, he sounded like he was challenging it. The devotees began clapping in time with the Prabhupada's kartas, and when Prabhupada began singing Hare Krishna, his half dozen followers immediately joined him, chanting both lead and chorus. Prabhupada looked at them gravely, encouraging the bedraggled early morning band of youngsters, and they responded determinedly. The guests sat in dragged contemplation, although one or two tried singing along. But the blond boy with the red headband remained adamantly disharmonious, mourning definitely, and if trying to throw off the effects of the chanting. Nonetheless, despite the boy moaning, which was sometimes loud and savage, Prabhupada kept singing and the devotees kept chanting. Mukundam and Highgrave exchanged anxious glances but tolerated the boy, unsure what else to do. Some of the devotees were disturbed and even frightened, but they had also heard Swamiji say in recent lecture that advanced devotees are not seeking in any circumstances. Swamiji was their leader not only in devotional prayer but also in how to respond to this intruder. So they waited and watched him for a sign. Prabhupada remained undisturbed. But although after 20 minutes the kirtan was strong and determined, the blond boy maddened was not going away. As the chanting built up momentum, he became more agitated. He screamed like a lost soul and hollowed like a rock singer. He was becoming more and more troubled and angry. When the devotees rose to their feet and began dancing, the boy began dancing too, but in his own way, crying and pounding his chest. Mukunda played louder on the drum. The sounds were discordant, a class of individual madness and group chanting until Prabhupada finally brought the kirtan to a close. The devotees bowed their heads to the floor and Srila Prabhupada intoned the Sankirtana prayers honoring the spiritual master, the Supreme Lord, and the sacred places. All glories to the assembled devotees, is said. They responded, Hare Krishna. All glories to assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhupada said. And then, as was his morning customs, he announced, chant one round. Everyone sat down, including the crazy hippies. The devotees put aside the drums and kartas, reached for their large red beads, and began chanting japa in unison. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Fingering one bead at a time, they uttered the mantra, they proceeded to the next bead. Surprised at this turn of events, the blonded boy commented loudly, "Pour out!" As rapid chanting filled the room, the boy jumped to his feet and shouted, "Come with me!" He whirled about, faced Srila Prabhupada, and howled, "I am God." Then he began screaming long, loud basket cries, "Oh, oh, oh, ah, oh." He sobbed, growled, grumbled, stomped his feet like a small child. He explored every sound his voice could make, beating his fist on his chest again and again. He cried, "I am God." And one of the boy's friends suddenly played a few notes on a panpipe. But Srila Prabhupada kept chanting japa, and the devotees also tried to continue chanting unended, while at the same time keeping an eye on the madman and wondering where it would all end. Then, what a final violent ejaculation, the boy shrieked, "I am God," and in anger and disgust strode out of the room, slamming the door behind him, yelling as he ran down the street. The proper japa peacefully engulfed the storefront, and Srila Prabhupada's voice assumed its place more clearly above the voices of all chanting devotees. After about 10 minutes of chanting, Prabhupada recited, "Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam." Let there be all glories to the congregation chanting of Hare Krishna, which cleanses the dirt from the mirror of the mind and gives a taste of the nectar for which we are always anchoring. As Prabhupada put on his spectacles and opened the Bhagavad Gita, he had been speaking his morning on the sixth chapter. The room settled and became silent for hearing his lecture. His students, some of whom had been imbibing his instructions for more than 2 months, listened attentively as he spoke the eternal Parampara message. It was Krishna's timeless message, yet Swamiji was presenting it just from them as they sat on the rug early in the morning in the small storefront 518 Frederick Street in Haightasbury. Prabhupada lectured on the transmigration of the soul. Foolish people, he said, aspire for material acquisition. They don't know that these things are finished with the death of the body. Spiritual life, however, is of the utmost importance because it is never lost. So, even if Krishna consciousness becomes inconvenient or uncomfortable, one should never give it up. Srila Prabhupada was again stressing that the devotees is never disturbed, a point that seemed especially relevant in the wake of this morning interruption. A devotee, Prabhupada explained, is always tolerant. Prabhupada told a story about the great devotee Haridas Thakur, a contemporary of Lord Chaitanya, who endured severe beatings at the hands of the Muslim magistrate. As Prabhupada told the story, he improvised dialogue. "Oh, the magistrate said to Haridas, 'You are born in such a nice family and you are chanting Hare Krishna.'" And then Prabhupada spoke the Haridas, "Sir, many Hindus also have become Mohammedan. So if some Mohammedan become Hindu, what is the harm?" Prabhupada did not change the pitch or recent of his voice while taking different parts of the dialogue, but with a subtle storyteller art, each voice became a distinct person. The magistrate spoke threateningly, "Oh, you are arguing?" Then Prabhupada became the narrator. So it was decided that Haridas was to be punished. Give the dog a bad name and hang it. Then Prabhupada became Haridas. Bloggers who, despite repeatedly beating Haridas, were unable to make him cry out in pain. Finally, exhausted, they spoke up, "Sir, the idea was that you would die. But now we see that you do not die. So now punishment is waiting us." Haridasa, what do you want? The plougger says, we want that you should die. Narrator, then he played himself into Samadhi, and the plougers brought him to the magistrate. The magistrate, throw him in the water. Don't put him in the graveyard. He was become Hindu. Srila Prabhupada concluded his tale. The others were flogging him and he was chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. He was undisturbed, he was steady. Therefore, Lord Krishna says that a person who is spiritually advanced, for him there is no misery, even in this world, and what to speak of the other world. A devotee suffers no loss. Prabhupada explained, even if he doesn't become perfectly Krishna consciousness, or even if he falls away, in next birth also will be human. There was a prince. Prabhupada began a story to illustrate his point. His name was Satyavan, but he was to die at a certain age. His horoscope said, but one girl named Savitri, she fell in love with that boy. Now she wanted to marry. Her father told her, he will die at a certain age. You don't marry. But she was bent, she was married. In course of time, the boy died. Say after 4 or 5 years, and the girl became widow. But she was so staunch lover, thus she won't let the dead body go away. And the Yamaraj, the what is the English for one who takes away the body for the soul after death? So he came to take the soul away. So this chaste girl wouldn't allow the husband's body to go away. By Prabhupada's voice and widening eyes, he appeared as Yamaraj, the Lord of Death, speaking to the widow Savitri. It is my duty that I should take. You give it up. Otherwise, you will be also punished. The girl gave up her husband but followed behind Yamaraj. Then Prabhupada's Yamarajas, by a slight dropping of his voice, become compassionate. My dear girl, you go home. I give you benediction that you will have a son. Don't cry for your husband. But Savitri continued to follow Yamaraj. Yamaraj said, why are you following me? Then Prabhupada Savitri spoke, not in a feminine voice, but with a reasoning and a heart of Savitri. Now you are taking my husband. How can I have my son? Prabhupada spoke as narrator. Oh, then he was in dilemma. He returned her husband. So similarly, there is a technique. If you take to Krishna consciousness, then your husband or this human form of life is guaranteed. The devotees understood the gist of the story, but they weren't perfectly clear what their lives had to do with the woman in the story. Some, however, understood if they took to Krishna consciousness, their ill-destined lives could become auspicious. Yes, Srila Prabhupada continued, a spiritual life is the most auspicious life. He looked around empathetically at the devotee seated before him on the floor. Anyone who has done something nice, auspicious thing, oh, it will never be vanquished. He will never be put into difficulty. It is such a nice thing. He ended his lecture and asked for questions. A young woman raised her hand. You say that people foolishly worship the photographs of someone who has already gone. You gave the example of George Washington or Gandhi. But can't the photo of this spiritual teacher be very helpful to teach others to love him? Prabhupada, yes, those who are spiritually advanced, they are not different from this photograph. Just like here is the statue of Krishna. He is not different from Krishna. The original person Krishna and the statue of Krishna are the same. Just like we are chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna and the name of Krishna are non-different. Do you realize it? If you are not getting some spiritual enlightenment by chanting Hare Krishna, then do you think we are simply wasting our time? No, we are not wasting our time. We are actually getting spiritual ecstasy because there is no difference. Similarly, a spiritually perfect person and his photograph is the same because it is in the absolute stage. Is that clear? Govinda Das raised her hand. You said that after leaving this body, a person in Krishna consciousness goes to a higher planet. Prabhupada. No. If you make perfection of Krishna consciousness, then after leaving this body, you go directly to Krishna. But if you are not perfect, if you have simply executed a certain percentage only, then you will get a chance of another human body. But one who has understood what is Krishna, how Krishna takes his birth, how Krishna acts, he doesn't get any more material birth. Then where does he go? Tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti. He comes to me. That means in the supreme abode of Krishna. Therefore, we should be very serious. Why should we wait for another birth? Either in very pious family or rich family or in another planet, this human body can give you the highest perfection. But we have to be very serious and try for the perfection. But we are not serious. We are not very serious. Actually, human civilization means that people should be very serious to have perfection of this human body. That is a perfect human civilization. That is missing at the present moment. Srila Prabhupada sat in silence for several minutes, not moving. No one in the audiences made a sound. Finally, he reached over for his kartal and began loudly ringing them together and singing, Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya. And the devotees joined him. Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya, Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya. It was Prabhupada's desire to see his disciples raise their Krishna consciousness to 100% in their present lifetime. They could do it too because the chanting was absolutely potent. If there was something they didn't understand, he would explain it. Govinda Dasi had not understood. She had thought that a devotee was meant to go to a higher planet, but now she understood. And he had told them to become more serious. He knew they sometimes went to the donut shop and even smoked cigarettes after kirtan, and he tolerated it. But he let them know that he really wanted to be completely serious. Unless they were completely serious, they might have to go to a higher planet within the material universe. And what good was that? To rise to a human birth took many lifetimes. Human life was meant for perfection. So they should be serious. But he had said, we are not serious. After the kirtan, Srila Prabhupada left the storefront and returned to his apartment. Hayagriva, turning to Haridas, asked why no one had thrown the crazy boy out. In New York, Hayagriva said Brahmananda would have removed him at the first outburst. You have to be careful with the yippies here, Haridas explained. Tactful is the word. In this neighborhood, if someone walks around high on LSD, people automatically assume that is due all the respect of God and should be tolerated. They come in and jump up and down and scream, but we can't lazy hand on them because they are LSD saints. If you had touched the boy this morning, the whole neighborhood would be down us. The diggers next door are a pretty noisy, but they unplug their jukebox during the lecture, and they have been very friendly, giving us clothing and helping us decorate the temple. Sometimes the health angels go over there and raise a lot of noise, and sometimes they even come in here. If they do best to humor them, they are always trouble. That very morning, some health angels started a fight in the digger's store. The devotees could hear thuds and screams through the walls as a big block beat of their health angels. The brawl ended only after a police car and an ambulance arrived. Afterwards, about a dozen people drifted into the temple, talking about the brawl. Um, Arsarani put out extra plates for the guests. One day in March, 18-year-old Wayne Gunderson was walking down in the street when a piece of a paper blowing along the sidewalk caught on his foot. He tried to kick it off without breaking his stride, but it hung on. Then he stopped and tried to kick it off. He could not. He reached down and picked it up and found that it was a plier. Stay high forever. Advertising lecture by Swami Bhaktivedanta at 508 Frederick Street. Like so many others, Veni, a mild mannered young man who worked for the post office, had come to Haightasbury to take part in the revolution. He attended rock concerts and Beans browsed through the books and posters in the psychedelic shops, shared an apartment with his girlfriend and another couple, and took drugs. But he was quite polite and solitary. He did not dress like a hippie, but wore clean, conservative, casual clothes and a whimsical, odd looking sports cap. The player about the Swami seemed a timely coincidence because when he had been planning to go to India to find Guru, he decided to go to see Swami Bhaktivedanta on Patrick Street. When he was surprised to find only a storefront, he was started by the picture of Swami in the window. No smiling bird yogi, but a seven-headed Swami with a stern look. When he went in, it was a typical Haightasbury scene with hippies sitting around, but there were also a few people with big red beads strung like a garlands around their neck. And up front he saw the Swami. When he was impressed as Prabhupada began chanting Hare Krishna and he found the lecture form and authoritative. The Swami stressed, "We are not these bodies." And when he spoke of Krishna, he decided Krishna so personally that it was like being introduced to Krishna. After a few meetings, when he got up the nerves to ask a question, can one practice Hatha Yoga at the same time as Krishna consciousness? Oh, why do you want to spend so much time with that body? Prabhupada replied, and when he felt Prabhupada's high look deep within him, you are not that body. He said it is so strongly that Vene, who was easily hurt, felt like shrinking into the floor. This body is not important as the soul. Srila Prabhupada explained. So we should not spend so much time with the body. Exaggerating its needs, then he smiled at Vene. Besides, all yogas culminate in Krishna consciousness. And Vene felt that smile lift him completely out of his diminished and crushed condition. Several weeks later, when he asked about initiation, when the devotees told him he should go up and see the Swami, when he went and home and rehearsed his line first, anticipating what Prabhupada would say, when he prepared his own response and contrived the whole conversation. Then nervously he approached Prabhupada's door. But before he could even knock, the door opened and there was Prabhupada looking at him. Not sternly, as in this picture, but kindly as if expecting him. Yes, Prabhupada said, come in. The incident completely shattered when he planned approach. He concluded that Swamiji could read minds. So, trying to clear his mind of bad thoughts, he entered Prabhupada's apartment. Prabhupada sat in his rocking chair, and Veni, who usually sat on the floor, sat in the only other chair in the room. Veni immediately felt uncomfortable as he realized that it would be more proper to sit at Prabhupada's feet. But feeling too weak hearted to to alter the situation, he kept his seat nervously fingering his sportscape, Swamiji, he began, I would like to be your disciple. Prabhupada immediately agreed. He asked whether Vene could follow the four principles, and Vene, although not even sure what the four principles were, said he could. Prabhupada then asked him, what principles was the most difficult for him to follow? Well, he said, I have difficulty with meat eating. A lie, he was a vegetarian, but he was too shy to say that his real problem was uncontrolled sexual desire. Prabhupada laughed. Oh, that's no problem. We will give you prasadam. You can be initiated next week. Haribol. When I then asked if he would be able to go in India, he felt then Swami would be pleased to hear that his new follower wanted to go to his country. But Prabhupada seemed displeased. India? Why India? When I thought. The real reason he had want to go to India was to find Guru. Well, he said, to learn Sanskrit, I will teach you Sanskrit. Prabhupada replied. So there was no need to go to India. And he would be initiated by a genuine Guru next week, right here in San Francisco. Some devotees helped Vene prepare for his initiation ceremony. Hayagriva lent Vene his dhoti, a piece of yellow cloth, much too large for Vene. Devotee set up a sacrificial arena in the storefront, a bed of earth, firewood, colored dyes, flowers. During the ceremony, Vene was nervous. When Prabhupada chanted the mantras, Vene could not hear the exactly, so he just mimicked as best he could. And when Prabhupada began to fire sacrifices, Vene felt a little frightened because the initiation seemed such a serious commitment. He watched Prabhupada gravely building the fire and saying the mantra. When Prabhupada initiated Vene with his new name Upendra, Vene did not hear it clearly and began to worry. Then the ceremony ended and Prabhupada stood up and abruptly left the storefront. Upendra. Someone reminded me that I should go upstairs and give Swamiji an offering. So I decided to give him a baby blanket and a beast towel. It was not that I lacked money, but these things had some sentimental value to me. So I wanted to give them to Swamiji. I went upstairs to his room and he was sitting at the foot of the mattress. I came in and bowed down and presented him with the baby blanket and beast towel. He held them up in his fingers and looked at them, both in each of his hands. He said, these things are useless. And he tossed them down on the floor. I was hurt and I had nothing to say. I just sat there. After a while, I excused myself and went back to my apartment. The next day, I went to see the Swamiji during the evening visiting time. And he had the beast towel and baby blanket out on the floor like rugs so that his guests who come to visit could have something to sit on. I felt satisfaction that he had found some use for my offerings. Prabhupada said that Upendra was not living up to his vows. Since he was still living with his girlfriend, Upendra felt guilty about breaking the principles forbidding illicit sex and intoxication, but he just couldn't follow them. He wanted to tell Swamiji but could not bring himself to it. Besides, he thought even if he confessed, how could he stop? Upendra's girlfriend did not like Krishna consciousness, did not want to meet Swamiji, and did not want to come to the temple. So Prabhupada decided that instead of marrying Upendra to her, he would save Upendra from her. Prabhupada decided to make Upendra a brahmachari. Although Srila Prabhupada had about 25 San Francisco disciples, hardly anywhere brahmacharis. Practically, the only solid one was Jayananda, who was a little older than the rest. Jayananda worked all day driving a cab, chanting Hare Krishna even while driving. And when he was off work, he would be at the temple cooking or doing any services, you could find or sitting with the Prabhupadas in his apartment with the other devotees. He was known for his serious japa, singing cross-legged, eyes squeezed tightly shut. He would his stunt of beats up in both hands and rock forward almost to the floor and back, chanting intensely, oblivious to the outside world. He was serious, and that was the only way one could remain a brahmachari. In New York, Prabhupada had about a dozen brahmacharis, but a more permissive attitude among his followers in San Francisco made brahmacharis' life more difficult. I will stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada Lilamritam ki jai. Hare Krishna. Prabhu, it basically completes.